So let's start, I guess. I mean, the audience is here with us, and I'm going to. For those of you who don't know who Gaur Gopal Das is, I'm going to read out his profile. An electrical engineer, studied in the College of Engineering in Pune, which is now home to a whole lot of software companies and all kinds of technology behemoths. And he worked for a bit at Hewlett Packard. So we've seen engineers becoming stand-up comics, actors, directors. I think it's something about what he looks like today and what he does now is definitely in sync with the engineering as a the course itself. I think something special about how engineering is taught in India makes people really question their existence. Over to Gaur Gopal Das ji, because the life coach who's articulate without doubt and more articulate than some of the best speakers we have heard anywhere on the planet, and he carries a certain amount of wit and wisdom. Wisdom by the tons, wit spectacular, and all of that is going to come together over the next half an hour, 45 minutes, 1 hour, depending on how much you want to engage with him. And he's always ready to it's going to be all light, and at the same time we are here in search of meaning that would take us from the current chaos to order. And I'm going to jump in at some point with some very dumb questions of my own. So help me out, throw in your questions so that I can sound a little more intelligent than I am. Thank you so much, Guruji. Over to you.
Thank you, Shriram, for that kind introduction, but you're very modest. Extremely modest.
No, you're kind.
But thank you very much. I want to express my deep gratitude to Business Insider and Business Insider India for giving me this opportunity to be with all of you at this Global Trends Festival to share a couple of my thoughts on finding meaning in chaos. At this point of time, of course, we are all confronted with a lot of chaos and mayhem surrounding us. The corona pandemic has practically kind of thrown all our plans and aspirations off the mark. And it is in such challenging times, in such difficult times, struggles, that we look for some hope, for some inspiration, for some motivation to see how we can come out of it and see how we can grow out of it, to see how we can find meaning in this chaos and bring this chaotic situation back to order. But the fact of life is that nothing's perfect. As much as we want our life to be in order, as much as we want our life to be perfect, as much as we want our life to be in place, change is the name of the game. Things move from order to disorder. Things move from a very organized state to chaos and mayhem, and life can sometimes be far from perfect. I remember one girl wanted to get married, and she asked her mom, "What do you call a guy who is like, I want to get married? And what do you call a guy like who's really handsome, who is enterprising, who is wealthy, who's very romantic, who does all the work at home, who takes care of all the chores, who does not fight? What do you call a guy like that?" The mother said, "Imagination of the mind." Trust me, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have a perfect partner, you don't have a perfect house, you don't have a perfect job, you don't have a perfect gadget, you don't have things in this world which are perfect. We're not really looking for perfection. What we are looking for is meaning. And there is going to be chaos, there is going to be disorderliness, there are going to be difficulties, problems, struggles all around the place. And we're looking at how can we rise above them? How can we find meaning and purpose in them? How can we find a solution in them? And how can we grow out of what we're going through? Somebody said, if you're really, really going through serious problems in your life, like really serious problems, there's a solution. Take your phone, and on your phone, set your spouse's picture as the wallpaper. And he said, whenever you're really faced with a massive challenge, look at the picture of your spouse as the wallpaper on your phone and say to yourself, if you can handle this, you can handle anything in your life. Now, jokes apart, the fact of the matter is, we all need to equip ourselves, brace ourselves with a coping mechanism in a way that we can handle these challenges, we can handle these difficult times, and we can bring chaos back to order. This evening, I thought I would share with you three interesting stories which illustrate three crucial, important principles which can help us transform the way we grow, which can help us find meaning in these chaotic and difficult times. Here's my first story. A lady was sitting on a highly high risen stool and was embroidering a certain design, a certain pattern on a piece of cloth. Now, you may have seen probably your mothers or some ladies who would, back in the day, embroider designs on a piece of cloth. They would have this wooden ring, they would have this wooden hoop, and they would fasten this cloth in that wooden hoop. And then, with varieties of colored threads, they would make this designed pattern on this piece of cloth. So, this lady was sitting on this high stool and embroidering a pattern on this cloth fastened in the hoop. Her little 6-year-old came up to her and said, Mom, what are you doing? The lady said, Well, darling, I'm trying to make a beautiful design, a beautiful pattern on this piece of cloth. The girl said, Are you kidding me, Mom? All I can see is a jumbled up mess of varieties of colored threads, black and blue and pink and yellow and green, all intertwined with each other to form a royal mess. The lady said, Darling, the problem is you're looking at the cloth from your side, from your angle, from your perspective. She picked up the little girl, put her on her lap, and said, Now look at this piece of cloth from my angle, from my perspective, from my side. The girl was astonished, gobsmacked. Just a moment before, what she had seen was a jumbled up royal mess of all kinds of colored threads intertwined with each other. And now, when she saw from her mother's side, she saw a beautiful design, a beautiful pattern evolving on this piece of cloth. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not just about embroidery on a piece of cloth. The same principle is true in life as well. When we look at our life, when we look at the situations in our life from one perspective, we see a mess, we see chaos. But when we change our perspective, when we shift our perspective, when we change and shift our vision, the way we look at life, on the other side, we see a beautiful design. We see order. On one side, from one perspective, we see chaos. But from the other side, from another perspective, we see order. We see pattern. We see design. We see the potential to grow. You know something? I have never seen anything beautiful evolving without chaos behind it. If there's something beautiful, if you see something in order, if you see something in a specific design, if you see a pattern, if you see growth, you must know that there's been chaos behind it. And somebody has seen in that chaos the potential for order, the potential for a pattern, the potential for a design, the potential for growth, the potential for progress, the potential for evolution, the potential for impact. You know something? It is that potential that we need to see in chaos. Like that girl, right there on one side is messed up threads, but within that mess on the other side is the pattern evolving. I cannot help but recall the story that Steve Jobs shared at his 2005 commencement speech at the Stanford University. Steve Jobs shared the story of his chaos, how his life was full of chaos. His very birth kind of began in chaos. His mother was deserted when his mother was pregnant. Her boyfriend at that time denied marrying her. Her parents said that she cannot have the child, but after a lot of insistence, the parents agreed to have the child, but said, well, you cannot keep the child. You need to put up the child for adoption. She gave birth to Steve and she put up the child for adoption. And the only condition was that the parents should be graduates and they should give good education to the boy that was born to her. Later, she realized that the parents who were going to adopt Steve were not really graduates, but they promised that they would put him up in a college. 17 years later, Steve Jobs found himself at one of the reputed universities, probably on an equal par with Stanford, at Reeds. But then he asked himself this question. Everything had been chaotic. And now here's another question to him. I'm practically spending all the money that my family has on my education. And am I even loving this? Am I even liking this? Is this even taking me somewhere? It is at that time, after dropping into that course at Reeds, that Steve Jobs decided to drop out. It wasn't an easy decision. It wasn't an easy decision. Chaos had surrounded his life all over at all points of time. He didn't have enough money. He didn't have a dorm room. He didn't have a place to sleep. He didn't have food to eat. He was trading cans, so Coca-Cola and soda cans for 5 cents for his food. He would walk 7 miles to the Hare Krishna temple to get a meal to eat. Chaos, trouble, struggle, difficulty, problems. And then he decides to drop out. And when he dropped out, he decided to find out what he was interested in. Reeds at that time offered a course in calligraphy. All the best posters, the best flyers that were designed in the United States of America at that point of time were coming from Reeds. He decided to take this course in calligraphy. And as he got into the course, he started seeing the finesse, the art, the craft, the beautiful science behind calligraphy. He studied serif and sans serif typefaces and learned what made great typography great. And at that point of time, what did he see in it? Jumbled threads, green and blue and yellow and pink and gray, all in a jumbled up mess. What do you get out of calligraphy? How do you make a career out of calligraphy? Couldn't see. But right there in that chaos, dropping out of college, taking up a course which apparently didn't have any prospect, laid the seed, the potential for incredible order, for incredible evolution, for incredible growth. It was only when Steve Jobs started Macintosh, developed the first Macintosh computer, did he realize that the calligraphy that he had learnt then, all the typefaces and the typography that he had learnt then, was put into the Macintosh. He realized how that calligraphy, what he had learnt then, how the event of having dropped out had contributed to beautiful orderliness in the way that the fonts were on Macintosh and practically on all computers in the world today. It takes that shift of perspective. It takes that shift and change of vision to be able to see the potential in the mess, to be able to see the prospective meaning, the prospective purpose, the prospective growth in the bloody mess that is lying all around us because of whatever situations we go through individually and collectively. Therefore, I often say it's not really the problem that is the problem. It is our vision that makes us see the problem as the problem. If we learn to change that vision and start looking at the potential seed of growth, that is when, ladies and gentlemen, we can start finding meaning in chaos. Which is why the speech Steve Jobs said we need to learn how to connect the dots backwards. Very often, when we look at things in retrospect, we see how within that chaotic situation was that potential for growth. And if that situation wouldn't have happened, we would not be who we are today. In fact, we are grateful for the chaos. At that moment, in that particular moment, that situation, we are not able to see it. Our mind complains, our mind cribs and it grumbles. But in retrospect, if we take the right path, we see that what happened was good for us. And which is precisely why Steve Jobs said, connect the dots backwards. Today, in your current situation, professionally, there may be a problem. Personally, in your life, there may be a problem because of what is happening globally. But recount to your memory and recall to your memory all those episodes, all those instances where something wrong was going on. Some chaotic situation was surrounding you in your life. And now, in retrospect, look at how that situation was responsible for who you are today. And if it happened in the past, I can't see why what we are going through today in the present cannot unfold into something beautiful tomorrow. So, therefore, my first story teaches us a very crucial and important principle. Principle number one, to find meaning in chaos. Change your vision, change your perspective. On one hand, if you see the jumbled up mess of colored threads, that jumbled up mess in the bottom of the cloth is turning into a beautiful evolved design and pattern on the top of the cloth. So try and see that scene. Even if you can't see it physically, trust. Trust your gut, trust life, trust your inner voice, or trust karma, or trust your destiny, whatever you call it. And recall those experiences by connecting the dots backwards and believe that the same can happen if you change your perspective. My second story for this evening, ladies and gentlemen, is from the year 1939, World War II. Another week, another day, Stanislavski Lech was sitting in his beautiful home with his beautiful family, his spouse, his parents, his lovely kids, and having a fantastic day. Little did he know that order doesn't remain order. Order has all potential to turn into chaos. Suddenly, one fine day, 7 months back, little did we know that one virus could turn all our plans, strategies, aspirations, and dreams off and throw them down the drain. Little did we know things were already moved into chaos. Little do we know that there's something sitting within our body, and suddenly everything's orderly, and suddenly some health issue comes up. Order turns into chaos. Little did Stanislavski let know on that beautiful day when he was spending his time with his family that things were about to change. That day, Hitler's men, the Nazis, stormed into Stanislavski's home and captured the entire family and brought them to the concentration camp in Krakow. Every single member of his family was killed right in front of his own eyes. And Stanislavski was employed at the concentration camp as a laborer who was responsible for dumping and loading dead bodies who were killed there in the camp on a truck, which would then shift these dead bodies and corpses to a graveyard several miles away. And everybody in the concentration camp was asking questions. How could the Nazis do this? Why is God doing this to me if they were believers? Why is life doing this to me if they were non-believers? Why under the sun? Why the bloody hell is this happening with me? Each one of us has gone through these questions in our mind. Why is this happening to me? People who are laid off today during this corona pandemic from their jobs have this question: why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Did I do anything to deserve this? Ladies and gentlemen, everybody there was asking this question: why me? Why is this happening to me? Stanislavski decided to change the nature of his questions. In that situation, it was an impossibility to find happiness, to find peace. How under the sun would you find happiness and peace in a concentration camp? How under the sun would you find happiness and peace when your job is taken away during the current situation? You're working at half the salary, or your businesses, your work is suffering terribly. How do you find happiness and peace in such a situation? In a trying circumstance, we don't look for happiness. We don't look for peace. You cannot find it. We're trying to find meaning there, not happiness and peace. And when we're talking of finding meaning in that situation, in that chaotic mayhem, we need to change the nature of the questions that we ask ourselves, the nature of the questions that we ask life in general. Instead of asking the question, how is this happening to me? How could they do this? Why is this happening to me? Stanislavski decided to ask himself the question, what can I do to get out of this situation? Because to that question, why is this happening? Either we don't have satisfactory answers, or sometimes we just don't have answers. But to that question, what can I do about what is happening to me? We always have a potential answer that is waiting around us. No lock maker has ever made a lock without a key. The key comes along with the lock. The key is lying somewhere around. The lock is right there in front of your eyes, locked up. The key is lying somewhere around because there's no lock without a key. What we need to figure out is, where is the key? What we need to figure out is find that answer, find that meaning which is lying right around us. But we can only identify that key. We can only identify that answer. We can only identify the solution. We can only find a purpose and a meaning when we change the nature of the questions that we ask. Not how are they doing this to me? Not why is this happening to me? What can I do with what is happening to me at this point in time? Guess what? Stanislavski, as he was thinking, what can I do with what is happening to me? What can I do to escape out of this situation? His meaning. He could find happiness. He couldn't find peace. He could find meaning. One of the most popular books that people have read, one of the global international bestsellers, is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, talking about the concentration camps of Hitler. You can't find happiness. Don't worry. Don't be toxically pressurizing yourself that I need to look for something good out of it. I need to look for something to find happiness out of, and it's good. We should try and do that. We should try that finding that positivity. But when things are so challenging, it's hard. Start asking the question, what can I do with what's happening to me? Greatness is not that problems don't happen to you. Greatness is what you do with the problems that happen to you. Stanislavski, who used to load these dead bodies and corpses on this truck to shift them to the graveyard, one night decided to take all his clothes off, like every other corpse there, and lie down there in the middle of the corpses as a dead body. It was a risk. It was a risk. But you don't get anything great unless you take a risk. It was painful, troublesome, lying there amongst corpses with the stink of the rotten flesh of all the dead bodies. It was painful. It was a risk. It was torturous. It was traumatic. But what other option did he have but to endure that and try and make that attempt to escape out of the concentration camp? Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The next day, when the other laborers who would also do this came there, not realizing it was Stanislavski, they dumped him on the truck. Several hours the truck didn't even start, and when the truck engines finally started revving, Stanislavski found a ray of hope to move from chaos to order, to find meaning in the middle of this chaotic, trying circumstances that he was in. When the truck finally reached the graveyard, all the bodies, hundreds of them, were dumped down there. And guess what? He laid down there until uh, sunset. And as night fell, Stanislav, with no clothes on, emerged out of the pile of those dead bodies and fled, ran 25 miles from captivity to freedom, from chaos to order, from hopelessness to hope, from mayhem to meaning. It was because he changed the nature of his questions from from why, from how to what could he really have a purpose and meaning in the middle of that chaotic situation. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell all of you this story and want to bring this principle up to you. But change the nature of your questions. To that question, why is this happening to me? There probably is no satisfactory answer, probably no answer. But to that question, what can I do with what is happening to me? There is an answer. The key is there lying around. If you change the nature of your questions, you'll probably be empowered to look at that key. So my second principle is, do not ask yourself that paralyzing question, why is this happening to me? Ask yourself this empowering question, what can I do with what is happening to me? Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, when he was the CEO back in the day, he had a difficult time with the investors. Difficult time with the investors. Howard Schultz had seen his father as a boy. He'd seen his father who was working for a diaper delivery service. Once he was loading the diapers in a truck, his father slipped off on a layer of ice and fell and broke his hip and his ankle, and the company hadn't paid for his health care, hadn't looked at his insurance. They didn't cover him. They just threw him out. They sacked him out of his job. Howard Schultz had seen it. He didn't keep asking the question, why did this happen? He said, what can I do with what has happened? He decided to support his family. Not to support his family, he decided he will not allow this to happen to anybody when he starts working, when he starts doing something in his life. And which is precisely why he decided to make sure that every single person at Starbucks had complete health coverage facility available in the 1980s, even for somebody who worked as less as 20 hours a week. And for 2 decades, he faced so much challenge from the board of directors, from his investors. And when the company was in difficult times, Howard Schultz didn't budge. He invested in his people. He'd seen what had happened with his father. He'd seen that chaos. Within that chaos, he found the seed for orderliness. He invested in his staff. That's what led to Beanstalk, which was allowing his employees to become partners with Starbucks. Ladies and gentlemen, the second principle is change the nature of your questions. Move from the paralyzing question, why is this happening, to the empowering question, what can I do with what is happening? And you will see something beautiful will emerge, something meaningful will come out of that question, what? And that's the second principle of finding meaning in chaos. Here's my last story for this evening's discussion on finding meaning and chaos, ladies and gentlemen. A gentleman was stuck. It was like stuck on this one side of the river, on the bank of the river. He needed to go to the other side, to the other bank. The river was deep, it was a strong current. There was no boats, no one around would take him across. He decided to take grass and straw and leaves and twigs and branches of the tree, tie it all together and make a raft. As he made this raft for himself, this man put this raft in the river, using his hands as oars and lying on this raft, he swiftly crossed the river to come to the other side of the river, on the other bank of the river. He was so thankful that he made this raft. He was so grateful that he had crossed this river, which had such a strong and a powerful current and the potential to kill him and drown him. He was grateful. He gave a sigh of relief when he reached the other side of the river. And now he felt to himself, this raft that I made has saved my life. This raft that has been of great value to me. This raft that I made has actually rescued me from this difficult time. I should keep this raft along with me for a future time as I walk. Maybe there's another river that I would need to cross as I walk towards my destination. He tied the raft on his back and started walking. As he was walking around, he entered into a dense forest with shrubs and trees. They were so densely populated within this forest. They were so close to each other that the man couldn't walk any further because the raft was huge and he couldn't walk through the trees. His movement was stunted because of the raft. He only had two options now: to throw the raft and walk through the forest because there's such less space between two trees the raft wouldn't pass through, or just stay there. The man decided to himself, I think I can always make another raft when I need, but at this point of time, I need to let this raft go into the past and move into the future. He threw the raft down and walked through the forest towards his destination. I always love to narrate this story because it illustrates a very important principle. Patterns that have served a purpose in our life at a certain point of time may not necessarily serve the same purpose later in our life. Before the pandemic, whatever served the purpose for us, whatever worked for us, may not work for us today. So when we talk about finding meaning in chaos, we talk about letting go of those old patterns that no longer serve their purpose. We talk about letting go of those old attachments to old ways of doing things that stunt our growth. We're talking about a new normal. We're talking about a new world. We're talking about being digitally connected. We always were, but taking it to the next level. Those things that don't serve their purpose any longer and stunt our growth need to be shunned, need to be let go of if we want to come out of the mess, come out of the chaos, find purpose, meaning, and growth in the mayhem that we are going through. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, the 7 words that are the greatest and the biggest enemies of our growth are: we have always done it this way. We have always done it this way. Who cares? We may have always done it this way, but that methodology, that process doesn't serve a purpose any longer. So, yes, when we're talking about finding meaning in chaos, we're talking about letting go of those old patterns that stunt our growth. The corporate world is replete with examples, case studies of people who were rigid. We have always done it this way, who decided not to change, who decided not to keep up with the changing trends. And they are simply stories in the pages of history. And today as well, we have a choice to be written in the pages of history or to create history letting go of those old patterns and adopting new patterns, new ways of dealing with things in a way that we can emerge victorious out of what we are going through. Which is precisely why there is a need to press pause and introspect on these things, to refine, to hone, to improvise, to enhance the quality of the process that we have taken up for ourselves. And when we did not do that, and we were moving at a fast pace in our own comfort zone, basking in that warmth, I feel this pandemic has pressed that pause for us to start finding meaning in chaos. Conclusively, to wrap everything up, we've heard three powerful stories this evening with three principles that can help us find meaning in chaos. Through the story of the embroidery that the lady was trying to, the embroidered pattern that the lady was trying to create on the cloth, and through the story of Steve Jobs, we learned our first principle of finding meaning in chaos. Shift your perspective, change your vision. Within the jumbled up mess is the potential seed for meaning and growth. Recall to your memory all those episodes where you were in chaos, and in retrospect, when you look at it and connect the dots backwards, you would see without that you wouldn't be who you are today. From the story of Stanislavski Lech and Howard Schultz, we learned the second principle. Stop asking yourself the paralyzing question, why is this happening to me? And start asking yourself the empowering question, what can I do with what is happening to me? And you will see that something beautiful, spectacular, and remarkable will emerge out of the question, what? And from the story of the man and the raft to cross the river, we learned a third principle in finding meaning in chaos. Let go of those old patterns that do no longer serve your purpose, that are responsible to stunt your growth, and adopt new patterns, new principles, new processes which can help you move on in the journey that you've taken up for yourself. And therefore, conclusively, if we haven't spent the time to press the pause, ladies and gentlemen, the current situation has pressed the pause for us. Let us reflect, let us introspect, and redefine our process, redefine our journey, and surely, slowly yet surely, we will get there. I wish to thank you all very, very much for your kind attention this evening. And once again, I want to express my gratitude to Business Insider and, of course, Business Insider India for giving me this opportunity to be with all of you at the Global Trends Festival and share a few thoughts on finding meaning in chaos. I hope these thoughts have helped you in whatever way they have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much on behalf of Business Insider and the hundreds of viewers who've been with us, um, 40 minutes or so. And I've been getting messages from a lot of people saying at each of your stories, and they were inspired at the first one. I don't know what happened with the second and the third, and messages are flowing from all over the world. I would definitely seek your permission to, pose maybe a couple of questions from what the viewers have asked.
Sure, sure.
If not, if you're pressed for time, we can hang it up right now.
Sure. Maybe we can take one or two questions. Sure.
Sure. So I have one question for you that's from my side. I love the way you ended with the necessity for a pause and rethink. And I
Yes.
think, and how the current scenario has imposed upon us. One of the issues that I repeatedly have sort of faced in the last 7 8 months is that I see a lot of people, and including myself at many times, where we are not able to deal with this pause. We don't know what to do. The pause has raised so many questions that didn't exist before the pause. And
Yes.
while that itself was difficult, uh,
Mhm.
how am I going to deal with, like, suddenly I am alone? And when I say I'm talking for a lot of other people.
Sure.
I am alone with my thoughts. I am alone. I am faced with, um, you know, the darkness of my being. I am
Correct.
alone. I am alone, and in one room. Just sort of coming face to face with a lot of realities about the people around me, about my employers, about
Yes.
my employees, about my
Yes.
clients, which I didn't have the time to dwell upon. I didn't. I only saw them. The relationships were transactional, but now I am looking at them as human beings with all their shades.
Yes.
So how do I deal with that, with a new set of noise that has come upon us because of this pause?
Correct. Thank you, Shriram, for that question. I think one of the most important, crucial elements in dealing with what we are going through currently in our lives is to accept the fact that we were conditioned to our life in a certain way. Correct. When we are conditioned to our life in a certain way, that conditioning kind of carries on. And when things change for us, it is that conditioning that kind of inhibits our adapting to the new set of uh, challenges, the new set of things that are around us. Which kind of I kind of gave a hint to that in my last story of the rat, right? Isn't it? It's that we are carrying that's kind of stopping us from moving on. So in this current situation, when we are faced with that darkness, and often we are kind of by ourselves handling family, handling employees, handling employers, handling teams, the work from home culture. Right? So it's kind of an entire new perspective. It's kind of a new normal, as we always say. So what do we do in such a scenario when we are just by ourselves and struggling to come to terms with this, which basically is shifting that conditioning. We're now kind of reconditioning ourselves to this new normal. Right? Now, when you're reconditioning, Rome was never built in a day. So do not put pressure on yourself, number one. Right? Do not pressurize yourself. Nobody should pressurize themselves thinking that 7 months are sufficient to adapt to the new way of life. How? How? When 20, 30, 40 years have gone and living life in a certain way, and that's what has conditioned you, how would 7 months be sufficient to uncondition you for 30, 40 years of conditioning and now condition yourself to a new normal? Correct? So, as much as there's a need to adapt, there's also a need to be human to yourself. Love yourself. Don't unnecessarily pressurize and push yourself to do something that you're not able to do right now. So, on an individual front, you should do that. And on a professional front, employers must also have that empathy, you know, to understand that this is a new thing and it's going to take a while, which is where the work culture, the work ethic, the work ethos comes in. Right? That we have an empathy towards people saying, hey, this has not been done ever. So, it's going to take a while. So, there's going to be mistakes, there's going to be problems, there's going to be troubles. Fine. But we'll get there together. Right? So, that's number one. It's going to take a while. Right? Number two is it is more than any other time, we've started needing some mentoring. We need mentors and guides. Through those dark moments, we find ourselves helpless. So we go read a book, we go check up a motivational video, we go browse through the internet, find something to lift our spirits and pep our spirits up. Right. And it helps. It helps for that moment. And again, we see ourselves going in that downward spiral. So, as much as these videos and books and the content that's available online is useful and helpful, I feel at this point of time we need to connect to a community of people. We need to build communities. We need to build online communities of people who are trying to navigate through this situation and share experiences, boost our morale together, right? And see how we can adapt to this new normal. So, yes, number one, it's going to take time, whatever time it takes. Every individual has a different time, right? Number two is we need online communities. We definitely need at this time to connect to online communities which can form and connect to online communities where we can open up and seek help. So I think, yeah, alone it's going to be challenging, but together, yes. When we see there are others in the same boat, they share their experiences, and we pull it all together. I think we're looking at
I
something
think
substantial.
I will come to that in just a bit because that's an interesting thought. Because our experience with online communities, especially the social media, I don't know how constructive it has been. But
Yes.
that there's definitely a need for a perspective like from someone like you. But I want to address the question from Hilary Huang. Spirituality belongs to a part of understanding that gives meaning to life and problems. It gives us a sense of purpose with the acceptance of issues that one faces in life. So, how do we go from how to why to what? How does one move towards this place? Um, Maybe I can add another layer to this and
Hmm.
say that, especially in the context of what you just said, in
Hmm.
trying to create communities and finding a common ground with a lot of people and moving to that what will be that what? How will it be defined? Will it be my individual cause or my individual preferences, my betterment, or or will it be the betterment of the community? What is the pecking order of priority?
Sure.
Merging this question with your community point.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
What is the real meaning?
For the what? Yeah. What does it mean? Is it individual or is it communal or social?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Thank you, Shriram, and thank you for that question. Who I don't know who asked it, but it's a brilliant question again. So I think when the person who asked the question mentioned that the journey from the how to the why to the what is a process, it's a spiritual journey, and I want to kind of re-emphasize and reiterate that point again, that it indeed is not an event and it's a journey. Once Michelangelo was asked, how do you make this marvelous spectacular sculptures, and Michelangelo said the sculpture actually exists in the block of marble. I chip the excess marble off. Now, quite a modest reply, but that's how I see our purpose, our meaning. It exists. What we need to do is chip off those layers that cover us at different points of time in our life. And as we uncover and chip off one at a time, it evolves. Correct. So it's definitely a spiritual journey, not an event. Finding your purpose and meaning is not an event; it's a journey. Now, coming to the particular question that you have asked, Sriram, in terms of the what is that what? Is it an individual what, or is it a social or a communal what? And I think it's both. It can't be this or that, it's this and that. Correct. We can only put the oxygen mask on someone else's face on a plane when there's a drop in the oxygen level, when our own mask is on our face. Correct. We can only be able to contribute tangibly, make a difference in the community or in the world around us if we are ourselves in place. If we are not in place, what are we going to put anybody else in place, right? So I think we are looking at ourselves as individuals. How do we come out of this mess? How do we grow from what we are going through at the moment? And then we are also looking at what, in terms of the purpose and meaning, and what we can do for others and how we can contribute. But so this during the same concentration camp, right, in Krakow, when we had Stanislavski escape, his purpose was escaping. There was another lady in 1939. She was a nurse, right? And at that point of time, when she saw that Hitler's men, Nazis, were coming and killing people back in black, just pulling them out of their homes, taking to the concentration camps and killing them, she she smuggled 2,500 children from the ghettos in Warsaw, Poland. She hid them in coffins, she hid them in plastic bags, she hid them in ambulances and smuggled them out so that they could live. That she took their names down, put them on a list, put them in a jar, and hid and buried those jars. In 1943, she was arrested for this, brutally tortured, sentenced to death. For some reason, she was freed. Good stroke of good fortune. She lived to tell us the story. Right? After she came out, she went to find those jars, looked for those kids, and brought those kids to the surviving family members in Poland. Right? Now, nobody knew the story until 2007, when she was nominated for being nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. She didn't win the Peace Prize, of course, and she didn't even bother about it. For her, the greatest prize was she had contributed to the community. And she mentioned that not only my three children, my grandchildren, 2,500, even if 1,000 survived when she was alive, they came back, their grandchildren came back only because she had done it. So in the same concentration camp, you had someone who had a very personal purpose of escaping, someone who had a very social purpose of, trying to save kids. So I don't think it's this or that. It's this and that. So that what is for me, what can I do with what's happening to me? And that what is for others in the community. What can I do in a way that I can help people in the community as well? Superb. A balance of the two. Balance of both.
Fantastic. And so I like making threads from conversations.
Sure.
Stanislavski's example in the story, it has definitely moved a lot of people, and I'm glad you brought up the other end of the spectrum, the Nazi experience as well.
Yes.
And it just only goes to show that evil is possible at all extremes,
Yes.
and therefore there is a need to fight that. And particularly the experience of Stanislavski you shared. We've read Solzhenitsyn, the Gulag Archipelago, similar stories.
Sure.
How does one, and I'm taking this from Keshav's question,
Mm-hmm.
isn't pressurizing important to extract performance? How does, where does one start? And where does one start is a very deep question, especially if you're in a situation like a concentration camp in Soviet Russia or in Nazi
Correct.
Germany, right? Where do you find that strength? And I ask this with a lot of political undertones, nothing hidden. There is a lot of conversation across the world.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is afraid that we are entering into that zone. There was, I mean, in very loose conversations, people say 1919 Spanish plague, then, Nazi Germany, then World War.
Yes.
What is to say that cannot happen again? Not, I am not saying this as an editor or as an opinion contributor to opinions. I'm just saying that these are things that people are saying. We shouldn't take them seriously, but these are fears. How do we address those fears?
Sure. Sure. I think I studied engineering. So for me, things were mathematics. Engineers are always into a lot of mathematics. I love telling a funny thing. The teacher once came
and
to a
and and
class
patterns.
and patterns, of course, flow charts, mathematics, and patterns.
Mhm. And on that note, actually, Guruji, I just also want to point out we have a lot of participants from Poland here, and your
Oh wow,
example must
lovely.
have hit home.
Yes, I'm
And
sure.
yeah, definitely,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah. So I always love to, whenever I talk of mathematics, I love to say that, a teacher once asked a classroom of students, like 7 year olds, she said, if a ship is sinking, a frog is croaking, and potatoes are 20 rupees for a kilo, guess what my age is? The student said, can you come back again, ma'am, please? She
Uh,
said, if a ship is sinking, a frog is croaking, and potatoes are 20 rupees a kilo, guess what my age is? The student raised his hand and said, 32, madam.
mhm.
She said, you're spot on, man. Bang on. That answer is absolutely right. How did you get it right? The guy said, look, my sister is 16 years old and she's half mad. That's the, that's the only way that you could be 32, right? Full mad.
Actually, I can tie this up to your change in perspective. When somebody asks you a question as bizarre as this, you could either question yourself and say, am I not informed enough? Do I not know enough to know this answer? Or you can
Yeah,
change perspective and prove them that you are mad, not me.
yeah. So when I talk about mathematics, like I said, I feel there's so many ways to put life in an equation as well, right? Now, one way to explain the equation of life is equal to constants plus variables. There are certain things in the equation of life which are constants, correct? No matter how hard we try to change them, we're not going to be able to change them, correct? We just cannot. Our shouting, our yelling, our thinking, our getting stressed out and worried and anxious doesn't change anything. Whether it's your personal life, whether it's a social scenario, whether it's your work life, whether it's a pandemic, whatever it is. I've always looked at life like this. To try to change the constants is like trying to hit your head against the wall. The wall doesn't move, your head hurts. And I've seen so many people hurting themselves internally over things that have nothing to do with their lives. In a world which is so digitally connected and where we are consuming so much information and content on on the internet. We're putting so much rubbish into our heads often, right? Putting so much rubbish in our heads. Rubbish that deserves no space in the most expensive real estate in the world, your mental space. There's no more expensive real estate in the world than your own mental space. And you wouldn't allow rubbish, you wouldn't allow anybody to dump rubbish into your house, would you? No. But we very conveniently and happily allow people and content on the internet to dump rubbish into our minds. So my principle is a lot of our worry, a lot of our stress, a lot of our look, stress, worry, and anxiety coming out of valid concerns is actually absolutely fine. We know it's real. That fear is real. Correct? We know it's real. But there's so much imaginary fear that the mind creates because of the rubbish, trash, and the junk that is loaded into our mental space. Right? And therefore, what's the point in hitting your head against the wall? The wall doesn't move, your head hurts. Correct? So that's my first thing. Do not beat your head against the wall. It's not going to move. Do not spend your precious time, your precious energy, your precious resources, precious mental space, and your precious Wi-Fi on
It
things.
isn't as precious anymore. It's going to be as we come down to two players from 16.
Yeah.
But right now it isn't as precious. But Guruji,
Yeah.
actually, and
Can I
just
just
like I
finish this
said,
part? Give me a
yeah,
moment.
sorry,
Let me
sorry,
just explain the
sorry,
second
sorry.
part of the equation, right? So there's the constant side to the equation of life, and there's the variable side, right? It's those variables that we are looking at. People who are constant focused are always fearful, stressed, worked out, anxious, frustrated. But people who are variables focused have accepted, ye kuch nahi kar sakta, I can't do much about this. Let me see what I can do. And the more you start shifting your attention from the constants to the variables, is how you deal with fears, right? You gain confidence by working on what you can do. If you're just going to be focusing on what you not can't change, and this is what's occupying your mind, well, imaginary fears are there to invade your mind and your consciousness. So yeah,
I
anyways,
mean, hearing you say this is giving me brand new respect for my wife because she keeps saying this every day in the morning once and in the evening once.
but yeah,
Why
Sriram,
break
it's
your
been a
head?
great pleasure to be
Yeah.
here with all of
No,
you for this event,
and
and I want to thank you for this.
thank you, thank you. I just want to end this because you spoke about banging your head against the wall. For all our international viewers, this is exactly what the men who stare at goats, that blockbuster film, taught us after 3 years. Guruji has kind of summarized that for us in a very short span of time. There are wishes coming to you from Poland, sir, like I
Yes,
told
I
you.
can read some of the
Uh,
messages. Yes.
you can, you can. Oh, fantastic, awesome.
Yes.
So, thank you so much. I wish I had the chance to talk to you about the. I mean, you touched upon social media a little bit, but I definitely think there is a greater space for a conversation on how to filter that
Yes.
information that is coming our way,
Absolutely.
because there
Absolutely.
are good things in it as well, like your videos, like
So
other
many.
motivational
Exactly.
talk, like Business Insider's stories and videos. But you definitely need to filter that out and take what is good
Indeed.
for you and what is more inspiring, what is more fruitful. Maybe
Yes.
sometime in the near future, I hope to have you with us on Business Insider on
Most
another
certainly. I
day.
look forward. I look
Yes,
forward, Sriram. And once again, thank you for having me over, and thank you all of you who were here with us for this session. Thank you very much, and wish you a great evening if you're in India, and greetings to all of you if you're vlogging in different parts of the world. Thank you very much.
fantastic. Thank you very much, and thanks to your team for making this happen.
Thank you.
To each one of them. And to all of you who've been with us, the global stage is just going to kick off in a minute from now. So don't leave the Intrado platform. Just jump on from this session to the next one. Some really big speakers coming up. You have the clarity of thought now. Now go get your data, insights, and make the most out of this event. This is a great networking opportunity for you. There are people, CXOs from around the world. Go there. If you don't know, you can create your own visiting cards from this platform and exchange it. Just make the most out of it. All the best. And I will see you again tomorrow when the APAC stage opens. And I'll be with you for all the other live and on demand sessions as well. So stay with Business Insider. All the best to each one of you. Bye.